Hey everyone, welcome back to another Tic Tac Taiko. You know, for years now on this channel, I've talked about all the things I know really well. Musicality, technique, performer mindset, different instruments, product reviews. But I also have a lot of knowledge of behind the scenes things like strategy, logistics, planning. And I'm going to start the year off a little different by talking about planning a taiko set. All right, before I jump into the content, a few things. First, I was very specific in my title of this week's video. I did not call it how to plan a taiko set, just planning a taiko set. And the reason is I don't know your group. I don't know what will and won't work for you. Instead, I want to talk about my experiences with planning taiko sets, what I've seen, what I've done, what worked better than some things, and hopefully you'll learn and enjoy hearing about it. For me, a set is the performance itself, and it includes the length of the performance, the personnel, the song list, the transitions, the equipment that needs to go, all of the things that the audience sees and enjoys. Whereas a gig is the location, it's the venue. So you could have a corporate gig or a festival gig, even a concert would be a gig. And knowing how I define those two terms will make the rest of this video make more sense. Now at this point you might be thinking, I don't know if this video is for me, I don't care about sets, or I already plan sets, but I assure you this video is for you. If you play taiko and plan sets, I guarantee you're going to hear something in my experiences and my stories that will make you think about how you plan yours. You may or may not want to change things, but you'll have better reasons for why you do or don't. If you play taiko and you don't plan sets, well, maybe not yet, but the information here will help you if you do. But even if you don't, you'll have a greater appreciation for those who do in your group. And if you don't play taiko at all, you'll have an even greater appreciation for what you see in terms of performances. You'll know way more about what goes into making a performance enjoyable. And the last thing, and probably the most important thing, is to hit that like button. And since it's the beginning of the year, if you haven't subscribed, now is a great time because of reasons. All right, now for the content. The rest of this video is split into 3 chunks. The first chunk is about the evolution of set planning in San Jose Taiko. The second is how empathy is learned through planning sets. And the third is how I personally plan my sets. So get some popcorn or some edamame, sit back and enjoy. When I started with San Jose Taiko in the early 90s, a lot of the sets were called. In other words, on the way to a gig, we were all in the same big taiko van with all of the equipment. The set leader would go through each song and all of us would call out the parts we wanted. So like song A, oh, I want solo 1, I want solo 2, oh, you want solo 3, oh, I want lead shime, whatever it was. Not all sets were called. The bigger sets, like concerts, were written up and distributed in advance. But many sets were called on the way there. This system had a few advantages going for it. For one, it was really fast. Even new members got up to speed pretty quickly and got into the flow and the rhythm. You called out the parts you want, sets went down the list, you're done. And the second advantage was how efficient this method was. So the person in charge of the gig who wrote the set just had to plan the order of the songs, and the rest of us on the way would figure out the personnel. Super efficient. But like with any method, there were disadvantages here. For one, on occasion, not often, but on occasion, people might forget a spot that they themselves called. And for the longer and longer sets, this was more common. Not the end of the world, but it led to maybe some unclean transitions and some awkwardness on stage. So imagine you go to your part, someone's in your part that shouldn't be there. Do you tell them, hey, go over there? Or is that gonna mess up the performance? Do you take the spot that they should be in? Can you? Do you just leave stage? What do you do? Everyone has a different opinion, and that's where you get some of that friction on stage that the audience may or may not be aware of. Also, this method really is biased towards those who are more assertive. Now, it wasn't a shouting match for this calling method, but it was a bit of a free-for-all. You had to kind of speak up about the parts you wanted, or you might wind up with whatever was left over. Now, after many years of this, there was a new policy implemented, which said every set, regardless of the length or the type of gig, had to be written up and handed out to the members in advance. Now, in advance could be anywhere from a week before to a day before to on the way to the gig, but it had to be handed out. The great thing about this method was that it completely eliminated people being too assertive or not assertive enough. That issue was gone because your parts were handed to you. You didn't choose them, they were chosen. But it only slightly alleviated the issue of people forgetting their parts. Now, if I give you a sheet a week in advance, you have plenty of time to plan. Even a day in advance, you can look at the part and look at the part and look at the parts. But if I give it to you on the way, you have just as much time as you did if you called it. So sometimes it worked out better, sometimes it had no effect. Now, around this time, we had more and more people joining San Jose Taiko and more people signing up for gigs. This is great, except the more people that sign up for a gig, the more likely you have, let's say, conflicting logistical strategies. In other words, people put stuff here when it should go there. So let me give you an example. Let's say you and I are in the same group and we're gonna play a set. We've got the first song set up. There's some stands over here, there's some stands over there. Great, good to go. Now I'm looking at the stands here and I'm thinking, you know what? After song number 2, these stands actually should be over there. So I'm thinking in advance, I'm being smart and I'm gonna put them over there in anticipation. Except I'm not being very smart because I forgot after the first song, those stands needed to be where they were and I just moved them. So the first song is played, people walk over here, no stands. Oh, they're over there. They go over there, they get the stands. It's okay, but it's adding length to a transition. Maybe somebody has to talk longer. Maybe there's awkward silence and people get annoyed. Not the end of the world. But again, the longer the set, the more often this would happen. More gigs, more likelihood. It wasn't the worst thing, but it wasn't a smooth performance and some people got more annoyed. So a new policy was enacted. Every performance over X number of members or X number of minutes would trigger a mandatory rehearsal during normal practice. The format was pretty much the same. We'd set the song up with all the equipment. We would go through just the transitions to make sure things were where they needed to be and people knew who was in charge of putting them where they needed to be. Then we would reset, play the entire set, songs and transitions. And if you weren't in the set, you would be sitting on the side or in front watching and observing. Then we would finish, gather up and have comments from both the performers and the audience members. This virtually eliminated people forgetting what they were supposed to do, where they were supposed to go, and equipment not being where it was supposed to be. This led to more polished, more professional performances, and more consistently so. In my opinion, this elevated San Jose Taiko's game quite high. But it came at a pretty hefty cost, and that cost was time. Because now we're rehearsing a set during regular practice hours, which means we can't practice other things the group might need, technique, bringing new people up to speed, whatever it might be. And if you weren't in the gig, you were sitting off to the side or in front, which, we did really value that feedback from the audience, but that was time people were literally just sitting around and not practicing. Ultimately, this was the method that San Jose Taiko chose to fit its current incarnation, and it really worked for what the group wanted. And what I'm hoping for those of you who are watching this who do plan sets, that you judge whether your set planning system is working for you. Has it evolved as your group has evolved? And where the pros and cons are, because whatever you choose is going to have both advantages and disadvantages. And ideally, you find one that's got more pros than cons. Now, it sounds weird to say that good set planning can build empathy, but it does, trust me. You may not know, but San Jose Taiko has a full-time staff of 4 to 5 members that get paid to do Taiko full-time, both the administrative and artistic things. For the longest time, all sets were created by staff members and only by staff members, and this was fine. But staff members were in charge of all the gigs, in creating the sets, sometimes preparing them ahead of time, like for concerts, or other times allowing the rest of the group to call them, like I mentioned. So one day, I don't remember when, someone, I don't remember who, had the idea to open up opportunities for regular members, volunteers like myself, to be in charge of gigs. And this was a fantastic idea. No sarcasm there. Truly fantastic idea. So that meant people like me would figure out the set order, the transitions, place the personnel, run the practice for all of this, make sure all the equipment, the right equipment, was loaded the day of, and be the point of contact when you actually got to the gig. So let's say you have someone with a certain characteristic, like they're really chatty. Nothing wrong, it's just they are really personable and they can be disruptive, they can lose focus, other people in the group lose focus. You know people like this. When you have someone like that leading the practice, being in charge of a gig, it's really interesting to watch them deal with people like themselves, but from the other side. So now they're trying to keep the schedule tight and there's someone being disruptive, and you can see that moment when they realize, oh, I do that. That's me. Oh, that's annoying. And helps them learn what it's like on the other side, which hopefully translates into them being more focused, not being judged, not shutting up, just realizing, oh, I do this thing that probably annoys the person over there. Or let's say you have someone who's often late to practices, late to showing up when everyone else is ready to go, and they're in charge of a gig, and now someone shows up late before they're ready to go. They can't critique that person, and they realize, same thing, oh yeah, I do that. That's not cool. It's a way for everyone to learn what it's like when things happen and how much they are responsible for causing the things that are happening. Now, sometimes you have to be more direct about telling people, but sometimes that sort of subtle learning builds empathy. Now, for this third and last section, I'm going to talk about how I plan sets. Everybody's approach to planning a set would be different, should be different. Some people might use paper and pencil, some people might use a tablet, some people might use a computer, some people might have actual little 3D things like they move around like beads and rocks and pieces of paper. Whatever works, works. But for me, my system, admittedly, is overly complicated and over-engineered. But I like it, and I'm used to it, and my favorite part is that it ensures fairness. No one's ever complained and said, oh, so-and-so got more solos than I did, or how come I have less breaks than blah, blah, blah. No one's ever said that. But I sleep well at night knowing if anyone did, I could literally pull up the numbers and go, no, everything's pretty even. Sorry. And to me, that's important. So I'm going to go through the spreadsheet that I make, because I make spreadsheets, and I'm going to show you an example of how I would plan a set from the very beginning to the very end. So I start with a pretty blank spreadsheet. You've got some rows, you've got some columns. Every song has 3 columns. The first column is the song itself. The second column is a rating system I'll talk about in a minute. And the third column is the transition going into the next song. On the far left, you have rows, 1 row per person. And on the far right, you have 4 more columns. These are subtotals, totaling the rating system, which I just mentioned, how many parts a person has, how many breaks a person has, and how many solos a person has. Now we're starting here with a blank canvas. A lot of artists hate blank canvases because where do you start? There's too many possibilities. Often a prompt or parameter helps start things off. So for my sets, I would place myself in a few of the parts I knew I wanted. It's my prerogative because it's my set. So I might pick, okay, the last solo of this song, that's fun, and a solo in this song, and oh, I love doing lead shime for this song. I wouldn't put myself in all of the parts. I would put myself in just a few to get the ball rolling. Next up, the newest members, who I have here in italics, generally have the least amount of options because they know the least amount of parts. So now I'm going to start to put them in parts I know they can play, but again, not trying to fill out the row, just get some pieces in. Now from here, it's like Sudoku. You start to fill out some of the columns, you start to fill out some of the rows. Sometimes you're just kind of putting a number down, in this case, a position, because it feels okay. You're gonna make adjustments anyways. You gotta start, you gotta keep going. Now, when about half of the positions are filled in, I'm gonna start adding the prestige numbers. This is the second column. What are prestige numbers? Every spot has a certain amount of prestige, visibility in a show. I rate it either a 1, a 3, or a 5. A 5 is a spot that essentially is a solo, where a person gets all the attention from the performers and the audience and generally is able to improvise even if their solo is set. A 1 is exactly the opposite. You're in the song, people can see you, but you're not really noticeable. No one's necessarily paying attention to you unless they really know you and like you. Otherwise, you kind of blend in. Now, a 3 is somewhere in the middle, where you might have an odaiko part. And unless you have 15 odaiko, the odaiko tends to stand out. It's noticeable, even if you have no creative choices. Or you might have creative choices, but you're in the back row. No one in the audience really knows what you're doing. They may not even know you're improvising, but you are having some creative choice. This is that gray area, and that's a 3. So I start to put down 1, 3s, and 5s next to the parts that I've already assigned. And I also want to make sure that I'm not forgetting parts in songs. There's nothing worse than thinking I'm done with my set and realizing, oh yeah, that part's missing a shime. So I start to be more aware, like, okay, this song is done, this song is not done. I'll make a little note just to keep myself honest. And now I also start noticing the subtotals on the right. I want to see if someone has maybe no parts or no breaks, and just kind of start modifying based on what I'm seeing, both in terms of prestige points, parts, breaks, and solos. And finally, once I filled all the available parts in, I'm done with the first of 3 parts of this process. I start the second stage with what I call the effort rating. So you had the prestige rating, which were numbers, effort are colors, green, yellow, and red, designating how much effort a person puts in. So I apologize that your screen is now very colorful, maybe even a little annoying, but hey, that's what I work with. A red part means you're gonna sweat, you're gonna get tired, you may not get exhausted, but you're not gonna have an easy time. A green part is the exact opposite. You probably won't even break a sweat at all. And yellow is somewhere in the middle. Your heart rate goes up, you might sweat, you might not, but it's not as easy as green and not as difficult as red. And the colors make it really easy to start to figure things out later on, but now, boom, we put the initial coat of paint down, as it were. I also start taking a look at the numbers on the right, all the different columns, and just see if anything stands out. So the first column, we've got an average of 18. Great, that's my baseline. I want to see who's above it, who's below it, but also the outliers, who's really high, who's really low. In this case, we have someone who's got a 26, far beyond anyone else, and someone who's at a 13, way below anyone else. So those are the 2 I'm going to start with first. But I also noticed that only one person has 1 break, while everyone else has either 2 or 3. So that's probably not fair. Even though the person might love to play a lot more pieces, I'm going for fairness, so I need to adjust that. So first thing I want to do is address the really high and low numbers. I'm going to give Tracy's solo to Ralph in this one song, and in the other song, I'm going to give Yolanda's Shekere part to Steve. Boom, we've addressed the biggest issue, and now we can move on to the others. Next, I see that Tracy now is at 21, and Yolanda is at 15. That's only 3 away in different directions from the average, but I would like them to be a little closer. Let's see what I can do. So I'm going to take this one song and switch Tracy and Steve's part. Tracy is going from a shime part, which is a 1, a green, to a front part, which is a 3 in red, and Steve goes the exact opposite. So that changes Tracy from 21 down to 19. Steve goes up 2 points, and we're looking good. Now I want to take into account the newest members, which are in italics, but I noticed that they're both at 20, which is above the average. Now it doesn't mean a new member has to be below the average, but in general, I want to put the newer members a little bit lower and have the more experienced members play more stuff. Since both of the new members are at 20, I want to see how I can adjust. And I also noticed that Yennefer is the lowest score of everyone with 15, so I've got to change this right now. So in this part, I take Albert's front part and just give it to Yennefer. That puts Albert down to 15, and I'm okay with that, at least for now. This puts Yennefer at 20, great, but Valerie, one of the new members, is at 20, while Albert, the other new member, is still at 15. It's 5 points difference. I need to get Valerie down much closer to where Albert is. Now, I did a bunch of things back and forth to see what would work, and this is what I came up with, so hold on. So in this one song, Yolanda's Chudaiko part goes to Tracy, my shime part goes to Yolanda, Valerie's Chudaiko part goes to Monty, Monty's shime part goes to Conrad. In this other song now, Tracy's solo is given to Yolanda, Yolanda's shime is given to Tracy. They're going to swap parts. And finally, I'm going to take Conrad's clave part in this song. Now that was a lot of moving parts, and it can be grueling and it can be complicated, but it's really satisfying when the things lock together and the numbers fit. The numbers look good. Now, does this mean everybody has the same numbers, the same amount of parts, the same amount of solos? No, that will never happen. If it does, it's a fluke, but that's not the goal. The goal is to take this swirling mass of numbers and variables and outliers and get it down something a little more manageable so where you can go, yeah, that's about right. I'm happy with it. And that's the end of phase 2. There's one more phase that takes nowhere near the time the first 2 did. Phase 3 is about the transitions. This is the third column for each song. I need to figure out who's going to do the thing going into the next song. Sometimes the thing itself has already been decided. Like going into song B will always be this transition. Going into song F will always be this transition. And there are other transitions that, you can mix and match. But in general, I know what I want to go in. Now I got to figure out who. And this is where you have to be strategic sometimes. For example, if you have a person who plays the flute transition going into the next song, and you have them coming out of a song that's a red 5, they're probably going to be out of breath. And that flute transition may not be so good. Same with the speaking part. Now, some transitions just automatically happen. Like everybody but one person is playing in the song, so that one person is going to be the one speaking about the next song. Some logical things. So I'm going to put those in first just to get those out of the way. And then I fill in the rest. Some things are a little easier, some things a little more difficult, but overall, at least in this set, I don't have to make any adjustments. If I find that I can't make a transition work because of the way the people are arranged, I might go change the transition and pick a different one or mix it up or do something different rather than going back and changing a part. Because at this point, changing one person's part might mean changing a lot of other people's. It's a domino effect. So the transitions I save for last because generally they're the least important and the most malleable. And finally, while we are technically done, I want to make sure that people will be generally happy with what they have. So I go over every person, every row, and ask myself, if I was that person, would I be okay with this? Like, are there too many breaks in a row? Are there too many red songs in a row? Generally, by this point, it's okay, but it's really good to check, just so you know. And then sometimes take a step back and look at the colors, look at the patterns, just see if I notice something standing back rather than looking at the trees. Now I'm looking at the forest. And once I'm okay with this, finally, we are done. Now it's important to mention, I don't hand anyone this. No one sees this. You're the first people that actually get to see this. What I hand out is something I will write later, which I'm not going to do here because it's not a real set. I'm actually going to draw the drums, however you draw them, with the person's name underneath so they know where exactly they are and what arrangement the songs are in. I need to tell people you're solo 1, solo 2, solo 3, because right now I just have solo, solo, solo. I can figure out the order later. So that's the next step. But again, how you do that and how your group does it, totally up to you. I told you this was overcomplicated. I told you this was over-engineered. I've probably lost most people by this point. But for those who have stuck around, congratulations. Now you know how I make sets. And maybe, just maybe, some of what I did might appeal to you. If the whole thing appeals to you, I'm sorry. Welcome to my world. Now, before I end this section, some of you might be interested in this. When I made this set, I took an old set from the past. I changed the names, I changed the song names, I scrubbed the parts clean, and I started from scratch. And then I looked at what I had created for this video compared to what I actually made in the past, and it's completely different. So it's really interesting to know that you could have the same people, the same songs, the same length of set. One day you'll come up with the configuration that looks like this, and one day you'll come up with a configuration that looks like that. And that's the beauty of creating sets. You never know what you're going to get, and it's always going to be a little different. So congratulations, if you made it this far. I know that was a lot, but this information I know is going to be useful to some people. Maybe not all of it. Maybe some people completely zoned out when I started going through my spreadsheet, but I know there's a few of you out there who love that, and you're just as weird as I am. So I see you. I see you. But ultimately, there's lots of different approaches to planning a set and distributing a set. There's no one right way, and there's no one right way for periods of time. What your group starts doing should probably be different than what your group is doing 5, 10, 20 years later. You've got to evolve as a group, and your systems and processes need to evolve too. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun planning and putting this together like a set. And until next time, Keep on practicing and be well.